Zeth Kari stepped off the transport ship and felt the artificial gravity of Joint Military Station Omega-7 pull at his heavy frame. His 4 arms carried his ceremonial weapons, while his thick, natural armor plates shifted with each movement. The station buzzed with activity as different species worked together in ways that still seemed strange to him. Veltar warriors like himself stood next to the energy-wielding Catherians and the small, pale creatures called humans. He had heard stories about humans, but seeing them up close was different. They looked so fragile with their thin skin and weak bodies. No natural armor, no energy powers, no extra limbs for fighting. Zeth Kari wondered how such soft beings had managed to join the Confederation as equals. Their technology was crude but effective, he had been told. Still, it was hard to believe these small creatures could hold their own in real combat. Captain Jake Morrison approached him with an easy smile. The human was tall for his species, but still shorter than Zeth Kari. His uniform was neat, and his movements were confident. Jake extended one hand in the human greeting gesture, and Zeth Kari carefully shook it, being mindful not to crush the delicate fingers. "Welcome to Omega-7, Jake said. "I'm your unit commander. Looking forward to working with you." Zeth Kari studied the human's face. Humans showed emotion differently than his people. This one seemed relaxed and friendly. "I am honored to serve with the Alliance forces," Zeth Kari replied in careful standard. Jake led him through the station corridors. They passed groups of mixed species crews training together. A Catherian was showing a human how to channel energy, while a Veltar warrior demonstrated proper armor maintenance. It all looked peaceful enough, but Zeth Kari knew real combat would be different. "Let me introduce you to the rest of the team," Jake said as they entered a common area. 3 other humans looked up from a table where they had been studying tactical displays. "This is Lieutenant Lisa Grant, our tech specialist," Jake said, pointing to a woman with short brown hair. She nodded politely at Zeth Kari. Her eyes were sharp and alert, constantly moving as if analyzing everything around her. "Sergeant Danny Cruz handles communications and intel," Jake continued. Danny was shorter than the others with dark skin and quick movements. He gave Zeth Kari a casual wave that seemed almost disrespectful until Zeth Kari remembered that human customs were different. "And Corporal Amy Chen rounds out our team," Jake finished. Amy was the smallest of the group, quiet and serious. She looked at Zeth Kari with curious eyes but said nothing. "We're a mixed unit," Jake explained. 2 Catherians will join us tomorrow, plus you make 6 total. Our job is to test how well different species can work together in combat situations." Zeth Kari nodded. The concept made sense, even if he had doubts about human effectiveness. "What kind of missions will we undertake?" "Our first assignment just came in," Lisa said, activating a holographic display. "Pirate stronghold in the Kepler sector. They've been hitting shipping lanes for months." The display showed an asteroid base with defensive positions and weapon emplacements. It looked like a standard raid mission, the kind Veltar forces had handled hundreds of times. Danny leaned forward and began pointing out details. "Intelligence says about 60 hostiles, mostly standard pirate gear. The base has good defensive positions but limited escape routes. Should be straightforward once we coordinate our approach." Amy finally spoke up. "Equipment loadout will depend on the assault plan. We'll need to account for different species requirements." Zeth Kari was impressed by their professional attitude, but still concerned about their physical limitations. "How do humans typically engage in combat? Your species lacks natural weapons or armor." Jake's smile became slightly different, though Zeth Kari could not identify the change. "We adapt. Every species has strengths and weaknesses. We've learned to work with what we have. Human weapons are designed for efficiency," Lisa added. "We focus on getting the job done rather than traditional combat forms." That evening, Zeth Kari observed the humans in their off-duty time. They played simple games with cards and shared stories about their home worlds. Their behavior seemed casual, almost careless. They joked and laughed as if they had no concerns. About the upcoming mission, Danny told a story about a previous battle that made the others laugh, though Zethkari found the details disturbing. The human had used deception and misdirection to defeat opponents rather than facing them honorably. When Zethkari expressed confusion about these tactics, Jake explained, "Every species fights differently. Veltar warriors value honor and direct combat. Catherians use energy manipulation and ritual forms. Humans use whatever works. We're not as strong or naturally gifted as other species, so we had to develop different approaches." "Different how?" Zethkari asked. Amy looked up from her card game. "We think of combat as problem-solving. Every enemy is just a problem that needs a solution." The casual way she said it made Zethkari uneasy. There was something in her tone that he could not identify. He decided it was just the difficulty of understanding human expressions and went to prepare for the mission. As he cleaned his weapons and checked his armor, Zethkari reflected on his new teammates. They seemed competent enough, and their technology was adequate. He still doubted their effectiveness in real combat, but was willing to give them a chance. After all, the Confederation had accepted humans as members for good reasons. He had no idea how wrong his assumptions were or how much his understanding of warfare was about to change. The destroyer UNS Titan carried them through hyperspace toward the Kepler sector. Zethkari had traveled on many ships, but human vessels felt different. Everything was built for function rather than ceremony. The corridors were narrow and efficient. The crew worked with quiet focus that reminded him of worker insects. During the 3-day journey, Zethkari spent time observing his human teammates. Their behavior continued to puzzle him. While Veltar warriors would spend this time in meditation and ritual preparation, the humans engaged in seemingly random activities. Jake Morrison could often be found in the ship's small gym, running on a machine that went nowhere. When Zethkari asked about this strange ritual, Jake explained that humans needed to maintain their physical conditioning through artificial exercise. Their homeworld had apparently made them dependent on constant activity. "We evolved as persistence. Hunters," Jake said while running. "Our ancestors would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're built for endurance, not burst strength." The concept was alien to Zethkari. Veltar warriors were ambush predators who relied on overwhelming force in short encounters. The idea of wearing down an opponent through sheer stubbornness seemed primitive yet oddly disturbing. Lisa Grant spent her time studying technical manuals and weapon specifications. She had memorized detailed information about every piece of equipment they would encounter, both friendly and hostile. When Zethkari commented on her thoroughness, she looked at him with those sharp eyes. "Knowledge is the best weapon," she said. "Understanding how something works means understanding how to break it." She showed him human weapons, explaining their design philosophy. Unlike Veltar energy weapons that required skill and training, to use effectively, human firearms were designed so that anyone could operate them with minimal instruction. They were simple, reliable, and devastatingly effective. "Your people's weapons are works of art," Lisa said, examining one of Zethkari's ceremonial blasters. "Beautiful craftsmanship, elegant energy patterns built to last centuries. Ours are built to kill efficiently and be replaced when they break." Danny Cruz seemed to do nothing but listen to communications traffic and read intelligence reports. He absorbed information constantly, building detailed pictures of their target and surroundings. When Zethkari asked what he was looking for, Danny smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. "Patterns. Everyone has patterns. The pirates, the local shipping, even cosmic background radiation. Once you understand the patterns, you can predict behavior or create false ones." False patterns? Deception. Making enemies think one thing while you do another. It's often more effective than direct confrontation. Amy Chen was the most disturbing to observe. She seemed perfectly normal most of the time, playing card games and chatting with the crew. but periodically she would disappear into the weapon storage areas. Zeth-Kari followed her once and found her methodically examining every piece of equipment. She was not just checking their weapons. Amy was studying the ship's tools, maintenance equipment, even kitchen implements. She handled each item as if evaluating its potential as a weapon. When she noticed Zeth-Kari watching, she showed no embarrassment. "Everything can be a weapon if you need it to be," she said, weighing a plasma cutter in her hands. "Humans learn to make tools, then learn to make tools into weapons, then learn to make weapons into better tools." The night before reaching their target, Jake called a planning session. The team gathered around a holographic display showing the asteroid base. Intelligence had updated their information. The pirate force was larger than expected, nearly 80 hostiles with better equipment. "Standard assault would be problematic," Jake said calmly. "They have good defensive positions and multiple escape routes. We need to be smarter about this." Zeth-Kari expected him to request additional forces or heavier weapons. Instead, Jake began discussing something he called psychological warfare. "Pirates are criminals, not soldiers," Danny explained. "They rely on fear and intimidation, but they're also cowards at heart. Make them afraid, and they'll make mistakes." Lisa pulled up technical schematics of the asteroid base. "Life support systems are centralized here. Communications array is vulnerable to interference here. Power distribution follows these pathways." Amy studied the display with intense focus. "Structural weak points here and here. Emergency systems route through these corridors. Waste disposal connects to these areas." Zeth-Kari realized they were not planning a military assault. They were planning to dismantle the base itself, turning its own systems against the occupants. This was not honorable combat, but something else entirely. "Is this how humans always fight?" he asked. Jake looked at him with that same strange smile. "We fight to win. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead." "But what about rules of engagement, codes of conduct?" "We follow the rules," Lisa said, "but we follow them very carefully. There's usually more than one way to interpret any rule." The casual way they discussed turning life support into a weapon made Zeth-Kari uncomfortable. Veltar warfare had strict protocols about protecting non-combatants and maintaining honorable conduct. These humans seemed to view such concepts as inconvenient limitations rather than moral imperatives. "Your species values honor above victory?" Danny asked. "Of course. What is victory without honor?" Amy looked up from the tactical display. "Victory is staying alive. Everything else is luxury." That night, Zeth-Kari had trouble sleeping. The humans' approach to warfare was unlike anything in his experience. They did not seem evil or malicious, just thoroughly practical in ways that disturbed him. They treated combat as an engineering problem to be solved rather than a test of skill and courage. He began to understand why other species gave humans a wide berth in galactic politics. It was not fear of human strength or technology. It was uncertainty about human thinking. A species that could turn asteroid life support systems into weapons might be capable of anything. As they approached the target system, Zeth-Kari watched his human teammates make final preparations. They checked their equipment with obsessive attention to detail. They reviewed plans and backup plans and contingencies for the contingencies. They seemed calm and professional, but underneath their casual behavior, Zeth-Kari sensed something else. These humans were not afraid of the upcoming battle. If anything, they seemed eager for it. Not in the way a warrior anticipates honorable combat, but in the way a hunter anticipates cornering dangerous prey. For the first time since joining the Alliance, Zeth-Kari wondered if he truly understood what humans were capable of. The assault began at 0600 ship time. Zeth-Kari expected a coordinated military strike with clear objectives and honorable engagement rules. What he witnessed instead was something that would haunt his dreams for cycles to come. Jake Morrison's plan unfolded like a carefully orchestrated nightmare. The first phase involved no direct combat at all. Lisa Grant had infiltrated the asteroid's communication systems during their approach, using legitimate maintenance frequencies to insert malicious code. The pirates never knew their own systems had been compromised. Broadcasting emergency evacuation. "Signal now," Lisa reported from her position aboard the Titan. The asteroid's internal speakers began announcing a reactor breach that did not exist. Emergency lights flashed throughout the base as automated systems responded to the false crisis. Danny, Cruz monitored the chaos from his communications post. "Panic levels rising. They're abandoning defensive positions to reach evacuation points." His voice carried a satisfaction that made Zethkari's skin crawl. "Phase 2 initiating," Jake announced. Amy Chen and Zethkari had already reached the asteroid's docking bay through a maintenance tunnel. Zethkari had expected them to disable the pirate ships to prevent escape. Instead, Amy began placing small devices on each vessel. "What are those?" Zethkari asked. "Insurance," Amy replied. She worked with mechanical precision, attaching the devices to life support systems and navigation computers. If they try to leave, they'll find their ships have developed sudden technical problems. The devices were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were programmed to create cascading system failures that would strand the ships without destroying them. The pirates would be trapped but alive, forced to surrender or die slowly as their air ran out. Jake and the two Catherian team members, Veltar and Shendar, entered through the main access tunnel. The Catherians moved with their species' natural grace, energy fields dancing around their forms. Jake moved differently, flowing like water through the corridors, never where defenders expected him to be. "Contact front," Veltar reported as the first pirates appeared. The Catherians' energy blast lit up the tunnel, striking down two hostiles. Shendar flanked left, her power field creating a barrier against return fire. Jake did something that shocked Zethkari to his core. Instead of advancing to support his allies, the human disappeared into a side passage. Moments later, the lights in the combat zone went out. Emergency illumination activated, casting everything in hellish red shadows. "Power grid compromised," Lisa's voice crackled through their communicators. "Switching to backup systems." The backup systems lasted exactly 30 seconds before they too failed. Jake had not just cut the power, he had sabotaged the backups, leaving the pirates in near total darkness while his team operated with night vision equipment. "This is not honorable combat," Zethkari transmitted to Jake. "This is effective combat," came the reply. "Honor doesn't keep my people alive." The pirates began falling back toward their command center, but Danny had anticipated this. His earlier intelligence gathering had identified their likely retreat routes. Now those passages filled with paralytic gas from breached atmospheric processors. Zethkari watched in horrified fascination as the humans systematically dismantled their opponents without engaging in direct combat. Every system the pirates relied on turned against them. Life support became unreliable. Communications failed at critical moments. Even their weapons began malfunctioning as Lisa's code spread through their computer networks. "Multiple hostiles converging on Section 7, Shendar reported. "They're trying to reach the armory." "Negative," Amy's voice cut through the comm. Chatter. "Armory is sealed. Magnetic locks activated. Security systems compromised. They're locked out of their own weapons." The pirates were not just losing the battle. They were being systematically stripped of every advantage, every tool, every hope of resistance. Zethkari realized this was not warfare as his people understood it. This was extermination disguised as tactics. Jake appeared beside him in the docking bay, moving so quietly that Zethkari's enhanced senses had not detected his approach. "Status report?" "The ships are disabled," Amy replied. 37 pirates, trapped in the command section, 15 more scattered throughout the base. "No casualties on our side." "No casualties?" Zethkari could not hide his amazement. "How is this possible?" Jake's expression was calm, almost bored. "We fought smarter, not harder. Why risk our lives in direct combat when we can make them defeat themselves?" The final phase was the most disturbing. Instead of demanding surrender, Jake began broadcasting messages throughout the base. Not threats or ultimatums, but information. Lists of crimes committed by various pirates. Details about their victims. Names and faces of people they had killed or enslaved. Psychological warfare, Danny explained to Zethkari. Break their will before breaking their bodies. The effect was immediate and devastating. Pirates began surrendering individually, abandoning their comrades to save themselves. Some broke down completely, overwhelmed by guilt and fear. Others turned on each other, blaming their fellows for bringing this nightmare upon them. "This is monstrous," Zethkari whispered. Amy looked at him with those quiet, serious eyes. "This is efficient. Every pirate who surrenders is one we don't have to kill. Everyone who breaks down is one who won't fight anymore. We're saving lives by ending this quickly." The logic was undeniable, but it felt wrong in ways Zethkari could not articulate. Veltar warriors fought with honor, meeting enemies in honest combat where skill and courage determined the outcome. These humans fought like something else entirely. Within 6 hours, the entire pirate base had surrendered. Not a single Alliance member had been injured. The pirates sat in their own detention cells, stunned and broken, unable to understand how. Their fortress had become a trap. Jake conducted the post-operation briefing with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout. Mission accomplished, base secured, prisoners taken, shipping lanes cleared, all objectives met. "How?" Zethkari asked. "How do you fight like this?" Jake considered the question seriously. "Humans spent thousands of years learning to survive. We're not the strongest or fastest or most naturally gifted species. We learn to use our minds instead. Every problem has a solution if you're willing to think outside traditional approaches." "But the way you dismantled them? Turned their own systems against them?" "Tools," Lisa said simply. "Everything is a tool. Weapons, computers, psychology. Fear, even honor, can be tools if you understand how to use them." As they departed the asteroid, Zethkari watched the human crew return to their casual behavior. They played cards and shared jokes as if they had not just demonstrated a form of warfare that challenged every assumption he held about combat. He began to understand that he had not witnessed humans fighting. He had witnessed humans hunting. And for the first time in his life, Zethkari was grateful that these strange, terrifying creatures considered him an ally. The celebration aboard the Titan lasted exactly 47 minutes. Jake Morrison was sharing a drink with his team when the ship's alarms began screaming throughout the corridors. The calm professionalism that had marked their victory evaporated. Instantly, as crew members ran to battle stations, multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, the ship's captain announced over the communication system. "Ravager clan ships, at least 6 vessels. They're moving to intercept." Zethkari felt his blood freeze. Ravagers were not pirates or criminals. They were something far worse. His people had legends about the cannibalistic species that treated warfare as a form of religious ceremony. Even veteran Veltar warriors spoke of ravagers in whispers. Jake's reaction was immediate and disturbing. Instead of showing fear or concern, his eyes lit up with something that looked like anticipation. "How long until they reach the asteroid?" 30 minutes, came the reply. "Perfect." Jake turned to his team with that strange smile that Zethkari was beginning to recognize. "Looks like we get to field test our tactics against real opponents." Amy Chen began checking her equipment with renewed focus. "Ravagers don't use standard technology. Most of our electronic warfare capabilities will be useless." "Then we adapt," Lisa said. She was already pulling up files on Ravager physiology and combat techniques. "Every species has weaknesses. We just need to find theirs." Danny Cruz monitored the incoming ships. Intelligence says Ravager clans usually travel with 60 to 80 warriors. They prefer close combat and psychological intimidation. No prisoners, no mercy. Sounds like they have something in common with humans, Zethkari said, immediately regretting the words. Jake looked at him with genuine curiosity. You think humans and Ravagers are similar? Both species seem to enjoy warfare in ways that others find disturbing. The silence that followed was profound. The three humans exchanged glances that seemed to communicate volumes. When Jake finally spoke, his voice carried a tone that made Zethkari's armor plates shift nervously. Ravagers enjoy causing pain and fear. They see suffering as beautiful and death as art. Humans enjoy solving problems and completing objectives. The fact that we're good at warfare doesn't mean we enjoy killing. Amy looked up from her weapon preparations. There's a difference between being effective at violence and taking pleasure in it. The Ravager ships reached the asteroid faster than predicted. The first wave of boarding craft launched immediately, carrying the distinctive bone and metal ships that marked their clan. Zethkari could see them through the viewports, twisted vessels that looked more like weapons than transportation. They're not attacking us, the captain reported. Heading straight for the asteroid. Looks like they want to rescue their pirate allies. No, Danny said, studying the communication intercepts. They're here for the fight. Ravagers don't rescue anyone. They heard about the battle and came to claim territory. Jake activated the tactical display. Options? We could withdraw, Veltar suggested. The Catherian warrior's energy field flickered with nervous patterns. Standard protocol against Ravager forces is to avoid engagement unless overwhelming. Superiority is assured. How many Ravagers are we talking about? Jake asked. Initial assault wave appears to be 40 warriors, Lisa reported. Additional forces probably remaining on their ships. Zethkari could not believe what he was hearing. You're considering fighting them? Ravagers are legendary warriors. They've never been defeated in ground combat. Jake's smile became something entirely different. Every legend starts somewhere, and every legend can end. The decision was made, with typical human efficiency. Instead of retreating to fight another day, they were going to return to the asteroid and engage the Ravagers directly. Zethkari tried to understand the logic but found none. This was not tactical thinking, but something approaching madness. Why? He asked Jake as they prepared to deploy. Why take this risk? Because if we don't stop them here, they'll use the asteroid as a base for raiding. How many innocent people will die while we're following standard protocol? The reasoning was sound, but the risk was enormous. Ravagers had never been defeated because they were perfectly adapted for close combat. Their natural weapons could cut through most armor. Their regenerative abilities meant they could survive wounds that would kill other species. Their psychological warfare was legendary even among humans. As their shuttle approached the asteroid, Zethkari got his first close look at Ravager combat doctrine. They had not simply boarded the asteroid. They had claimed it. Bone totems marked their territory while the bodies of unfortunate pirates decorated the outer hull. 38 confirmed Ravager warriors, Amy reported from her scanner. They've set up a defensive perimeter around the command center. Standard pack hunting. Formation. How long do we have before reinforcements arrive? Jake asked. Ravager clans usually operate independently, Danny said. But if this group sends a victory signal, we could see additional clans within hours. Then we don't let them send a signal. The assault plan Jake outlined was unlike anything in Zethkari's military experience. Instead of meeting the Ravagers in direct combat, the humans intended to turn the asteroid itself into a weapon. They would use the facility's industrial equipment, environmental systems, and structural weaknesses to create a killing field. Ravagers are adapted for traditional combat, Lisa explained. Claws, teeth, regeneration, pack tactics. They're not prepared for industrial accidents or environmental hazards. Amy was studying the asteroid's layout with disturbing intensity. Manufacturing sector has plasma furnaces, chemical processors, heavy machinery. all potentially lethal if properly motivated. You want to murder them with mining equipment? Zethkari asked. We want to win, Jake replied simply. Murder implies malice. This is just problem solving. The distinction felt meaningless to Zethkari, but he followed his team into the asteroid. What he witnessed over the next several hours would redefine his understanding of what humans were capable of when truly motivated. The first Ravager patrol encountered them in the main corridor. 3 massive creatures with razor claws and regenerative flesh that could heal most wounds within minutes. They charged with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Amy Chen met them alone. She did not try to fight them directly. Instead, she led them on a chase through the manufacturing sector, staying just ahead of their claws while they pursued. Zethkari lost sight of the combat but heard the sounds. Metal screaming, machinery activating, and then silence. When he reached the scene, he found 3 Ravager bodies crushed under industrial presses that Amy had somehow activated remotely. She stood calmly beside the machinery, checking her equipment for damage. Problem solved, she said. The roar that echoed through the asteroid corridors was unlike any sound Zethkari had ever heard. It came from deep within the facility, reverberating through metal and stone with a force that made the walls vibrate. Even the humans stopped, their systematic dismantling of Ravager forces to listen. What was that? Veltar asked, his energy field flickering with nervous patterns. Danny Cruz checked his scanner readings, and his face went pale. Warchief. The Ravagers brought a warchief. Zethkari's armor plates shifted involuntarily. Warchiefs were legendary even among Ravagers, massive creatures that stood 3 meters tall and had never been defeated in single combat. They were living weapons bred for nothing but destruction and conquest. How big? Jake asked, with what sounded like professional curiosity. Readings suggest 4 meters, maybe 800 kilos. Natural armor plating. Enhanced regeneration. Multiple weapon appendages. Danny's voice carried respect and fear in equal measure. The sound came again, closer this time. Through the surveillance system, they could see it moving through the main corridors. The warchief was enormous even by Ravager standards, covered in bone armor and carrying weapons that looked more like torture devices than combat gear. Standard protocol is immediate evacuation, Shendar said. No force has ever successfully engaged a warchief. Jake studied the tactical display with that same calm expression he had worn during the pirate assault. Every rule has exceptions. Every legend can be challenged. Amy Chen was already analyzing the creature's movement patterns. It's heading for the command center where we left the pirate prisoners, probably planning to claim them as trophies. Let it, Jake said. That gives us time to prepare. Zethkari could not believe what he was hearing. Prepare for what? You cannot seriously be considering fighting that thing. Not fighting it, Lisa said, pulling up technical specifications for the asteroid's infrastructure. Killing it! The distinction seemed meaningless to Zethkari, but the humans began working with the same methodical efficiency they had shown against the pirates. This time, however, their preparations had a different quality. They were not just solving a problem. They were engineering an execution. Warchiefs are adapted for traditional combat, Amy observed, studying the creature's anatomy. Thick armor, redundant organs, enhanced healing, but they're still biological. Biology has rules, Lisa added. Temperature tolerances, pressure, limits, chemical vulnerabilities. Find the right combination and even a warchief becomes manageable. Danny continued monitoring the creature's movement. It's establishing territory around the command center, probably planning to use the area as a base for expanding operations. Perfect, Jake said. That means it will stay in a predictable location while we set up. The plan that emerged was not warfare in any sense that Zethkari understood. It was systematic murder disguised as engineering. The humans intended to turn the entire command section of the asteroid into a trap designed specifically to kill one creature. Lisa began modifying the atmospheric processors to create a localized environment that would stress the warchief's biological systems. Not enough to kill it immediately, but sufficient to weaken its natural advantages. Amy worked on the structural systems, identifying load-bearing supports that could be selectively weakened. The goal was not to collapse the entire section, but to create a controlled cave-in that would pin the creature in place. Danny prepared psychological warfare elements, using the asteroid's communication system to broadcast sounds and images designed to provoke the warchief into specific behavioral patterns. Jake coordinated the entire operation with the same calm professionalism he had shown against mere pirates. Timing is critical. We get one chance at this. If we miss, it will hunt us through the entire facility. Why not just leave? Zethkari asked. The asteroid is lost anyway. Because that thing will use this base to launch raids against civilian targets, Jake replied. How many innocents die while we're filing reports about acceptable losses? The moral reasoning was sound, but the risk was insane. War chiefs were living legends precisely because they could not be killed through conventional means. What the humans were attempting had never been tried because it was considered impossible. Your species has no concept of impossible odds, Zethkari asked. Amy looked up from her sabotage work. Impossible is just another word for a problem we haven't solved yet. The execution began 2 hours later. Lisa's atmospheric modifications created a subtle chemical imbalance that would gradually weaken the warchief's regenerative abilities. The creature might not even notice until it was too late. Danny's psychological warfare proved devastatingly effective. The broadcasts included recordings of Ravager defeat cries and territorial challenge songs. The war chief responded exactly as predicted, moving to specific locations to investigate the apparent intrusions. Amy's structural modifications had turned key sections of the command area into a maze of potential collapse points. Each one was precisely calculated to create maximum damage while leaving escape routes for the assault team. Jake positioned the team around the command center with each member having specific responsibilities. Zethkari found himself assigned to what Jake called distraction duty. Your job is to be visible, Jake explained. War chiefs are programmed to focus on the largest threat, draw its attention while we implement the final phase. You want me to fight it directly? No. I want you to survive long enough for us to kill it. The distinction was important, but offered little comfort. Zethkari moved into position, his arms carrying weapons that suddenly seemed inadequate against the monster he was about to face. The war chief appeared in the command center with the casual confidence of a creature that had never known defeat. It was even larger than the scanner readings had suggested, moving with fluid grace despite its massive size. Bone armor covered its natural plating, while weapon appendages gleamed with alien menace. It saw Zethkari immediately and let out another, earth-shaking roar. The sound was not just noise, but a weapon in itself, designed to paralyze prey through sheer acoustic terror. Zethkari felt every instinct screaming at him to run. Instead, he opened fire with all 4 weapons, targeting the creature's sensory organs in an attempt to confuse rather than damage it. The warchief charged with devastating speed. Claws that could cut through battle armor swept toward Zethkari's position. He rolled aside, using his species' natural agility to stay ahead of the attacks. Phase 1 complete, Lisa reported. Atmospheric contamination at optimal levels. Phase 2 initiating, Amy added. Structural supports compromised. The warchief's attacks were slowing slightly as the chemical agents affected its system. Its regeneration was still active but operating at reduced efficiency. More importantly, its movement patterns were becoming predictable as the psychological warfare took effect. Final phase, Jake announced. Everyone clear the target zone. Zethkari dove for cover as Amy triggered the final sequence. The carefully Weakened supports gave way in a cascade of controlled destruction. Tons of debris crashed down on the warchief's position with mathematical precision. When the dust settled, the legendary creature lay pinned under rubble, its weapon appendages crushed and its armor cracked. It was still alive but helpless, trapped by engineering rather than defeated by combat. Jake walked calmly to the creature's position and placed a small device beside its head. "Goodbye," he said simply, and activated the charge. The warchief, that had never been defeated in combat, died in a carefully planned industrial accident. The remaining ravagers found their warchief's body 30 minutes later. Zethkari watched through security cameras as the legendary warriors, creatures that had never known defeat, stood in stunned silence around their fallen leader. Some made keening sounds that might have been grief or rage. Others simply stared at the impossible sight. Then they ran. "Pursuit?" Jake asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Negative," Danny reported. "They're heading for their ships at maximum speed. No formation, no tactical withdrawal. They're broken." Amy Chen watched the fleeing ravagers with clinical interest. Psychological impact was greater than predicted. Killing the war chief destroyed their entire worldview. "Good," Jake said simply. "Let them spread the story. Maybe other Ravager clans will think twice before raiding civilian targets." The casual way they discussed the psychological destruction of an entire warrior culture made Zethkari's armor plates shift nervously. These humans had not just won a battle. They had shattered a legend that had persisted for generations across multiple species. As they prepared to leave the asteroid, Zethkari found himself studying his human teammates with new eyes. They had returned to their normal behavior, sharing jokes and checking equipment with routine efficiency. Jake was all ready, reviewing their after-action reports. Lisa was documenting the technical modifications they had made. Danny was analyzing communication intercepts to ensure no Ravager reinforcements were incoming. Amy sat quietly in a corner, cleaning her weapons with the same methodical care she brought to everything else. She noticed Zethkari watching and gave him one of her rare smiles. "Something wrong?" she asked. "How do you do it?" Zethkari replied. "How do you go from casual conversation to systematic execution and back again?" Amy considered the question seriously. "Compartmentalization. Humans learn to separate different aspects of their thinking. We can be killers when necessary and friends when possible." "Does it not affect you emotionally?" "Of course it does. But emotions are just another factor to be managed. Letting them control your actions gets people killed." Jake overheard the conversation and joined them. "You're disturbed by our methods." It was not a question. Zethkari nodded slowly. "Your species approaches warfare in ways that challenge everything I thought I understood about combat." "What specifically troubles you?" Zethkari struggled to find words for concepts that seemed to have no equivalent in human thinking. "Honor. Respect for worthy opponents. The idea that how you win matters as much as whether you win." Jake's expression became thoughtful. "Do you think the war chief would have shown honor to the civilians it planned to raid? Would it have respected the innocents it tortured and killed?" "That is not the point. We should be better than our enemies." "We are better," Amy said quietly. "We're more effective." The conversation continued during their journey back to Omega-7. Zethkari tried to understand the human perspective, while the humans patiently explained their philosophy. What emerged was a worldview that was alien in ways that went beyond mere cultural differences. Humans had spent their evolutionary history as prey animals that became predators through intelligence rather than natural weapons. They had learned to survive by thinking differently, by refusing to accept limitations that other species considered natural law. "Every species has advantages," Lisa explained. "Veltar have natural armor and strength. Catherians have energy manipulation. Ravagers have regeneration and weapon appendages. Humans have problem-solving ability." Problem-solving is not a weapon. Zethkari protested. Everything is a weapon if you understand how to use it, Jake replied. Fear, technology, psychology, even an opponent's strengths can be turned against them. But what about codes of honor? Rules of engagement? Danny looked up from his reports. Rules exist to create predictable behavior. Humans excel at unpredictable behavior. The truly disturbing realization came when Zethkari understood that the humans genuinely liked him. Their friendship was not calculated or artificial. They treated him with warmth and respect that seemed completely separate from their capacity for systematic violence. Jake noticed his confusion. You're wondering how we can be friends with you while being capable of what you witnessed? Yes, because you're not our enemy. You're our ally and teammate. Humans are very good at distinguishing between friend and foe. And if I were your enemy? The silence that followed was profound. All three humans looked at him with expressions that seemed genuinely sad. Then you would never see us coming, Amy said finally. That night, alone in his quarters, Zethkari made his personal log entry. He spoke carefully, knowing that his words would be reviewed by Veltar Command and possibly shared with other Alliance. Species. Personal log, Zethkari, Warrior 2nd Class, attached to Joint Military Station Omega-7. Mission report filed separately. This entry contains personal observations regarding human combat capabilities and philosophy. He paused, trying to find words for experiences that defied traditional military categories. Humans do not fight wars. They solve problems. The distinction is important because it affects every aspect of their tactical thinking. Where other species see honor-bound combat between worthy opponents, humans see obstacles to be removed through optimal efficiency. They are not evil or malicious. Their violence is purely functional, applied with the same casual competence they bring to any other task. This makes them more dangerous than species that fight for glory or territorial dominance because their motivations are fundamentally practical. I have fought beside many allied species. Catherians are graceful and skilled. Veltar are strong and honorable. Humans are terrifying precisely because they are so thoroughly normal about being lethal. He stopped recording and stared out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, ravager clans were spreading stories about the death of their warchief. Other species would hear about the humans who had killed a legend through engineering rather than heroics. The galaxy was going to learn what Zethkari had discovered. Humans were not just another member species of the Confederation. They were something new and unprecedented. A species that had turned warfare into a science and practiced it with the same methodical approach they brought to any other problem. Zethkari activated his personal log again for one final entry. Recommendation to Veltar High Command. Maintain alliance with humans at all costs. They are invaluable as allies and would be devastating as enemies. Most importantly, never give them reason to consider us a problem that needs solving. He closed the log and tried to sleep. Outside his window, the stars looked different now. Less like distant lights and more like a vast hunting ground where humans moved with patient, methodical purpose. For the first time in his life, Zethkari was grateful to be on their side.